Apenas 3% de vocês serão um seleto grupo de heróis a caminho do Mar Alto.
A medicina é avançada e com o tratamento completo você pode voltar a andar, mas primeiro tem que passar.
Tempo acabou. Se tiver com cubo, ganhou.
Louco, meu cubo! Solta!
Eu me imaginei do lado de lá.
If you only had a 3% chance of becoming part of the upper class, would you take this exam? If not, you would have to work hard for the rest of your life. Just one exam could place you above 7 billion people, but this opportunity comes only once in a lifetime. To maintain their population, the offshore community selects 20-year-old youths from slum areas each year, picking the top 3% to become members of the offshore region. Once selected, they leave and never return. A 20-year-old girl says goodbye to her family. They are dressed in rags as they climb long staircases and high mountains, designed to prevent inland people from rebelling. Even if there were resistance, it would be quickly suppressed, though over the past 100 years, most people have come to appreciate the exam. Groups of young people gather, praying for the founder's blessing. They prepare for the challenge, wearing protective goggles and cleaning the dirt off themselves. This scene contrasts sharply with the clean room of the judges, who change into clean clothes and compress the dirty ones into boxes. If they fail the exam, they must change back into their dirty clothes. Everyone gathers in the large hall where the judges, dressed in suits and with neatly groomed hair, begin their speech. Only 3% will be selected to join the community built by the founding couple. There is no injustice there, but even if they pass the exam, their new life will be in a more glamorous slum than the one they left. The judges mention the resistance group, composed of those who failed the exam, and seek to overthrow the selection system in the name of equality. However, this resistance is always suppressed. The judges announce the official start of the selection process, calling each candidate by name, making them feel valued. As the candidates eagerly await their turn, the judges lead them in chanting, "Thank you, offshore," for this precious opportunity, distracting them from the inherent unfairness of the exam. The exam proceeds as planned, with candidates seeming to become better people, eager to help others. The official selection begins, resembling a job interview where confidence is crucial. If a candidate lacks confidence in their abilities, there's no need to continue to the next exam stage. One judge asks Johanna how long it's been since she last bathed. The last time was a year ago when it rained, as that was the only time they had water. Carolina stammers as she speaks, visibly nervous. Her anxiety leads to rejection by the judges, who don't know her true potential but refuse to accept those lacking confidence. Carolina misses her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Another contestant is disqualified for an unfortunate reason. He had prepared a speech for the selection, but the judges dismissed it as empty talk. He is rejected for speaking too much, despite pleading for another chance, as he has dreamt of this moment for 20 years. Rules are rules. After reclaiming his clothes, Offshore provides a healing booklet to those disqualified. Despite his frustration, he is escorted out. Among the contestants is Marco, brimming with confidence, as every member of his family has passed the exam at 20. The judges are intrigued. Michelle, willing to sever ties with her past life, catches the judge's eye and moves on to the next round. The judges analyze the final contestants, aware that Offshore recently captured a rebel who, under torture, revealed that a spy would infiltrate this year's exam. Identifying this spy is crucial, as their success would pose a significant threat to Offshore. As the interview round concludes, some are retained while others are disqualified. Those who fail return to their rags and the slums they came from. This life-changing exam offers the chance to join the upper class, but failure means returning to poverty. The game's rule is to assemble 9 wooden blocks. Fanato, unable to reach due to a disability, receives help from Michelle, surprising others who feel this isn't the time for kindness. Time ticks away, and Michelle struggles to find the last piece, while Rafane takes a block from another contestant, causing anger. When time is up, the judges state that those with 9 squares pass. The contestant robbed of a block is eliminated, despite their anger. Rafane, who took the block, passes. Aileen is shocked that such behavior is rewarded, but the judges remain silent. Many are eliminated. Michelle, with only 8 blocks, is puzzled as Fanato cleverly combines 8 pieces to form a larger square, allowing him to pass to the next round. The judges discover that combining 8 blocks into a large square results in the equivalent of 9 blocks. Impressed by this clever thinking, they allow Michelle to pass as well. She breathes a sigh of relief and thanks Fanato. When the judges finish counting Johanna's blocks, she reveals 2 more, bringing her total to 11 blocks. This clearly means 2 others were eliminated due to missing blocks. The judges are very pleased, noting that this year's candidates are exceptional. During lunchtime, the dining area is filled with food, the likes of which the contestants have never seen. Michelle thanks Fanato for his help, acknowledging that she also assisted him. As everyone eats, Rafane enters the cafeteria, drawing everyone's attention. They wonder why someone like him could still be in the selection process. He remains unfazed, even mocking them for speaking too softly. He questions their sense of fairness, pointing out that no one intervened when he stole the block. This, he argues, is because everyone is willing to do whatever it takes to pass the exam. He claims he just did what they all would eventually do and hopes they maintain their sense of justice when the time comes. He boldly states he will continue to steal others' achievements to pass the exam. He then provokes the toughest contestant, leading to a fight as expected. Johanna realizes Rafane's actions are intentional, garnering support for his ruthless strategy. She decides to befriend him, seeing it as a way to increase her chances. Next is the health check, an essential part of the process to prevent diseases from entering offshore. Fanato feels uneasy as many eyes turn to him, admiring his intelligence but aware of his physical limitations. When it's Fanato's turn, the screen displays his body, turning red and sounding an alarm. A doctor pushes him away for further examination, causing speculation among the others. Is he disqualified? The doctor examines Fanato, who has lost sensation in his legs. After administering a drug and using a scanning device, a remarkable change occurs. The doctor tests his legs again, finding a slight response. Though the drug's effects are temporary, with proper rehabilitation, his legs could fully recover. However, this is contingent on him passing the exam and reaching offshore. Since Fanato's issue is treatable, he is allowed to continue with the selection process. The contestants enter a room and envision their new lives after passing the exam. They face a difficult question. If they answer correctly, they secure a place in the top 3% of the world's 7 billion people and never have to worry again. If they answer incorrectly, they are immediately disqualified and return to the slums for the rest of their lives. The contestants must construct a hypothesis and determine the cause of the victim's death. The victims all have life-extending devices, indicating they are from offshore. When the crime occurred, they were eating. All contestants are serious about analyzing the situation, while Johanna relaxes on a chair. The judges monitor the contestants' attitudes through surveillance screens. In previous years, this question has eliminated half of the candidates. Aileen is shocked, wondering if half the candidates lacked analytical skills. Of course not. The purpose of the exam is to unify opinions, as each person has their own thoughts. Convincing others of your answer's correctness is challenging. The contestants analyze all evidence at the scene, including a chemical formula on the table. At this point, one contestant loses focus and rummages through the kitchen. Having been in the slums too long, he can't resist the sight of food and accidentally breaks something. Everyone is furious, fearing this might be a crucial clue and lead to their elimination. He is scolded and sits down, doing nothing further. Meanwhile, a girl tastes the food on the table to check for poison. Fanato interrupts her analysis, stating the victim was poisoned by the hostess. The others are puzzled by his conclusion. He explains that the rings on their fingers indicate they are married, and the mud on the shoes suggests one of them is a guest, having stepped in dirt on the way. But how does he know there was poison? Fanato continues, both men stood to help the victim, who, before dying, looked at the hostess's husband. In moments of desperation, people seek help from those they are closest to, but the victim did not look to her husband, indicating the hostess's husband had an affair, discovered by the hostess, who then poisoned the victim. Others notice that only the victim's plate has a specific sauce, making the answer clear. The formula on the table could be for the poison, and the hostess's face looks like a killer's. As contestants lean towards this answer, other possibilities are dismissed. 2 contestants lounging on chairs are pleased, feeling they can pass without effort by being in the right group. As Fanato prepares to submit the answer, a voice stops him. Rafane points out that Fanato's answer is completely wrong, but no one believes him. They are convinced that the answer is correct. Rafane throws cold water on their conviction. He explains that the question was devised by the offshore people, who wouldn't want the inlanders to see that even the upper class deals with infidelity and murder. He presents his own answer. There was no murder. The victim died from an allergy to silver. Michelle suddenly realizes that, except for the victim, everyone had metal items. The victim's ring was glass, and their necklace was wood, while the utensils were silver. Since they were at someone else's house, the victim might have unknowingly eaten with silver utensils, causing their airway to constrict due to an allergy. The issue of the soybean sauce on the victim's plate is a distraction. Perhaps the victim just liked it, or it's irrelevant. They notice a soybean sauce stain on the hostess's napkin, meaning she ate it too, thus disproving the poison theory. Another question arises. Why did the victim look at another woman's husband before dying? The answer becomes clear. Michelle realizes she missed the clue because she trusted Fanato's theory without thinking it through. The hostess's husband is a doctor, and the chemical formula is not a poison but a treatment method. Fanato, however, sticks to his initial theory, arguing that the hostess's lack of concern when the victim died was suspicious. Rafain then asks if the hostess might be blind. Johanna speaks up, explaining that the hostess's blindness would account for her lack of reaction. Marco searches a drawer and finds a Braille book, confirming the hostess is indeed blind. Fanato is stunned, wondering how Johanna figured it out. Johanna admits she was only pretending to be indifferent but was analyzing the scene all along. She noticed that the hostess's husband had a desk lamp, but the hostess did not, indicating her blindness. With the mystery solved, Rafain submits the answer, explaining that the death was an accidental allergic reaction. The judges ask if anyone in the team disagrees with this conclusion, especially focusing on Fanato. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Fanato concedes and agrees with Rafain's answer. The others also agree, and their answer is correct. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief. However, this doesn't mean they all pass. Fanato is worried that he will be eliminated for initially answering incorrectly. The judge enters, and Fanato braces for bad news. But instead, the man who rummaged through the kitchen and broke things is eliminated. To his confusion, Fanato had given a wrong answer, but it helped the team reach the correct conclusion. The man eliminated had contributed nothing to the team, unlike Fanato. Relieved, Fanato relaxes. Rafain approaches him, praising his hypothesis for its creativity, and reassures him that having capable teammates like Fanato is crucial. The next exam begins with a few coins and a bag, with the first to enter getting the first pick. The judges explain the rules. Each contestant has 15 minutes to eliminate one person. With 7 contestants and only 6 coins, the one without a coin at the end will be eliminated. If no one is eliminated within the time limit, everyone will be disqualified. The exam has no rules other than recognizing the coins. Rafain, having already secured a coin, feels confident, but the others do not. Those without coins feel it's unfair, while Rafain insists it's fair since he has a coin. Fanato sees Rafain holding 3 coins and watches as he returns 2, keeping 1 for himself. The rest of the group struggles and argues, unable to persuade each other. This life-changing exam is no child's play, and Rafain is frustrated by their naivete. Marco shoves Rafain to the ground, forcing him to relinquish his coin. They decide to vote on whom to eliminate. Michelle votes for Rafain, unsurprising him as he sees it as another form of injustice. She lists his transgressions, arguing that not eliminating him would be unfair to others. However, everyone forgets that Rafain's input helped them pass the previous test. If the next exam requires teamwork, could they afford to lose him? Rafain then chooses to eliminate Fanato, not because of the previous exam, but due to his physical limitations. He argues that Fanato, in a wheelchair, would inevitably be disqualified in a future physical challenge. Despite Fanato's intellect, Rafain insists that in a life or death situation, he would eliminate Fanato. Just 10 minutes earlier, Rafain had praised Fanato's potential, persuading the group. Now, he convinces them that if the next exam involves running, a wheelchair user wouldn't stand a chance. Realizing his likely elimination, Fanato resigns himself to his fate and stops resisting. Previously, Fanato would have relied on his abilities to solve problems, but now, for survival, he resorts to begging the others. He pleads with them, explaining that if he passes the exam, Offshore's advanced medical technology could cure him, allowing him to walk again. This has been his hope for decades. His emotional appeal garners sympathy, and the group decides to draw lots to determine who stays and who goes. With only 3 minutes left, a girl uses a hairpin to conduct the draw. Each person pulls a strand, and the shortest one means elimination. Lucas draws a long strand, while Rafain, although contrary to the idea, reluctantly participates and also draws a long strand, finding the lottery method now reasonable. Finally, it comes down to Johanna and Lucas. Johanna draws the short strand, meaning she should be eliminated. Everyone prepares to leave, keeping their coins, but when Lucas reaches for him, he finds it gone. Johanna has the coin, revealing she didn't follow the draw's rules. Lucas protests, but it's futile. The judges review the footage and discover that Johanna entered with 2 coins and only returned 1. Lucas, now disqualified, retrieves his ragged clothes and returns to the slums. Seeing Johanna stay surprises everyone, but this isn't a game for children. The winner stays, the loser goes. Fernando struggles with his choice. He used to be strong but had to resort to emotional appeals to survive. This test isn't child's play. In life and death situations, few follow the rules. If he had remained naive, he would have been eliminated. The next challenge places the contestants in a confined space with no obvious exit. Without finding a way out, they will all starve. But anyone who escapes has a chance to join the upper class. Marco stands before a screen displaying many numbers, seemingly figuring out the escape method. He gathers everyone and explains that the screen shows 64 binary digits, corresponding to the number of levers in the dormitory. They must pull the levers before the numbers change on the screen to escape. The group divides tasks. 8 people memorize the binary sequence and rush back to their designated dorm rooms to inform their teammates which levers to pull. This requires significant strength, and everyone exerts themselves to move the levers. They haven't eaten or drunk for a day and night, making the task even more exhausting. They must finish before the numbers change, or their efforts will be wasted. The dorm at the far end is very distant, leaving the contestant breathless from the repeated running and conveying instructions. Everyone needs to unite to complete this task. This is the last thing the offshore people want to see. The 64 numbers have been matched up, but the door didn't open. Instead, there was a sound from the pipeline. It was like the sound of a key turning, and when it opened, Marco looked puzzled. The judges observed the contestants' attitudes and were surprised at how smart they were. They managed to complete the first task in a short time. Marco showed leadership by rallying everyone quickly. The reward for completing the task left everyone speechless. The pipeline released some cookies and water instead of a key to escape. Marco sent someone to check the door, but no matter how they pushed, it wouldn't budge. At least they had some food, though it was barely enough to notice. Raffin wondered who would get the first serving, and Marco said it needed to be discussed since he had gathered everyone to get the food. Naturally, he thought he should eat first, but others protested. Without their effort to pull the lever, there wouldn't be any food, and they were unhappy. If not for their efforts in remembering the numbers, pulling the lever would be useless. Soon, they were arguing loudly over a small amount of food. Michelle suggested solving it alphabetically. The person at the end wasn't happy, but it was the only way to ensure everyone got a share. Instead of wasting time arguing, they decided to compromise. Agata, who was first alphabetically, got to eat first. They repeated this process to get more food. Marco seemed a bit dissatisfied. The numbers on the screen changed, and the group quickly memorized the sequence. One mistake could ruin all their efforts. Fernando went to his assigned room to read out the numbers, and everyone quickly took action, pulling the lever with great effort. But as long as they completed one round, they would get some food, and the sight of it motivated them. This way, everyone eagerly awaited their turn to eat. The judges, observing, started to feel bored. This scene of unity wasn't what they wanted to see. As time passed, some contestants grew too weak to keep going. The lever became harder to pull down, and the weaker ones couldn't even stand. The small amount of food wasn't enough to sustain their strength. The offshore people were pleased to see them struggling. Nisa was the last to eat, and she was so thin that she could barely manage the strenuous activity. No one knew what her fate would be. The judges wanted to know how many had been eliminated so far and were surprised by how outstanding this batch of contestants was. Thanks to Marco's leadership, all the contestants were very united. In previous rounds, contestants would fight over the first serving of food, and only a few could endure till the end. According to the previous rules, everyone would have passed by now. But that's not possible. The number of people who can pass is limited. If they are this good, the difficulty level must be increased. When there are too many outstanding contestants, only the best can stay. After several rounds, they began to think the system was broken since they hadn't received any food despite dozens of rounds. The offshore people had stopped providing food. Marco didn't want to stop, thinking they might have to complete another task. But everyone was exhausted from being confined in a space where they couldn't tell day from night. They might have been working non-stop for days. If they didn't sleep, they would die from exhaustion, even if they didn't die from hunger. Marco still didn't want to give up, believing a few more rounds would get them through. He didn't realize that the number of people who could pass was limited. No matter how much they continued, some would be eliminated to make room for others. Everyone went to rest, except for Agata, who stood there memorizing the numbers on the screen. Working for such a long time had affected her mental state, and she was mumbling the numbers to herself. Fanato advised her to rest, but she seemed to have gone mad. Seeing the contestants no longer united, the judge thought of a solution. He decided to distribute enough food for one person for one day. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from the pipeline, and when Fanato opened the hatch, a pile of food fell out. Fanato quickly opened a bag and started eating. Hearing the noise, everyone rushed out. Seeing the food, they began to fight over it. Even though Fanato grabbed a lot, it was taken from him. Michelle urged everyone to calm down, saying the food needed to be divided fairly, or those without food would starve. Those who had grabbed food ignored her, but they realized that without fair distribution, some would eat more than others. Everyone agreed it was best to divide the food evenly. Those who had grabbed more reluctantly added it back to the pile, even if they didn't want to. In Marco's eyes, this display of unity felt like a challenge to his authority. He believed he should be the one distributing the food. All the food was gathered together and divided so that each person received 3 bags, enough for one day. Everyone lined up to get their share. Only Marco was unhappy, wondering why the offshore people were suddenly giving out so much food. He thought maybe they didn't want too many people to leave. This was the key issue. The number of people who could pass was limited, as the judge smiled knowingly. Marco gathered the strongest people to try to break the door, but it was incredibly sturdy. There was a solution. They entered a room and chose an empty bed. Ignoring everyone else's stares, they removed the metal rod from the bed and used it to pry the door open. Using all their strength, they managed to create a small gap. As the gap widened, they quickly used the rod to hold the door in place. Finally, they succeeded. The gap was large enough for a person to crawl through, but no one wanted to volunteer to go first. Suddenly, there was a loud crack, and the rod bent under the pressure of the door. They all stood there, dumbfounded, and no one dared to go out anymore. After some hesitation, seeing the others' cowardice, Raffin decided to go first. The exit was pitch dark. He cautiously made his way to another door, which had light shining from the other side. However, the material of this door made him despair. Raffin had no choice but to go back and report. Marco wanted to gather more people to open the larger door, but Raffin advised against it, saying it would be futile. The outer door was like a safe door, impossible to move by human strength alone, and the smaller door had already taken a lot of their effort. Many were starving, and the 3 bags of food were not enough to fill everyone. Marco came up with an idea: steal food from others. Upon smelling the food, they all thought about stealing it. Armed with rods, they intimidated others into surrendering their food. Even those who resisted had to give in to the violence. All their food was taken. Raffin didn't want this, but he had no choice. After Marco's group left, Raffin suggested that as long as they fed the big guys, they could definitely open the door. What happened tonight was just a small matter. Raffin deceived them because the others couldn't possibly open the door. Marco had lost all reason. If the offshore people didn't want many to pass, he would eliminate some himself. They looted like bandits. The judges were very pleased with this scene. Fanato, realizing the danger, hid in the dormitory. He hurriedly called everyone to block the way. They tied beds together to form a barricade, the only way to avoid Marco's group. Marco and his crew looted everywhere. They found someone hiding food in a corner. He dragged the woman out, angry that she had dared to hide food. He forced her to apologize. She grudgingly did, but Marco wasn't satisfied and beat her to death with the rod. Feeling that an apology was not enough, he wanted to set an example to make others obey. The scene was completely out of control. Seeing someone dead, Raffin furiously cursed Marco, even wanting to fight him, but was held back. Now, Raffin became Marco's next target. Raffin ran for his life, and as he reached a dead end, he found the others building the barricade. He begged them to let him in. If he didn't escape today, he would die here. But he was with Marco's group, so this might just be an act. In desperation, Raffin whispered something to Michelle. Hearing this, Michelle let Raffin in and quickly blocked the way again. Marco's group smashed at the barricade with all their strength, while those inside held their weapons, trying to fend them off. The attack went on for dozens of minutes, but to Marco's surprise, loud roars erupted from behind. It was the people they had oppressed. Outnumbered, Marco's group was soon overpowered. Many were beaten to death on the spot. Michelle shouted for everyone to stop. Johanna emerged from the back. She was the one who had gathered the others to fight back. "If they're so vicious, we can't afford to be any less vicious," she declared. Alarm sounded, and the main door opened. The offshore controllers had seen enough people eliminated, the remaining ones would pass. The survivors scrambled out, though some would remain there forever. Marco, still barely alive, knew he couldn't die there. He dragged his injured body towards the exit. However, the judges deemed him unworthy of passing and pressed a button, closing the main door. Marco struggled to crawl out, only to be crushed by the closing door. The final survivors made it through. Typically, only 9% of participants reached this point, and to get into the top 3%, they would face another challenge. Ahead were two choices: take the money and return to an electricity-less, infrastructure-less slum, or go to the modern city with nothing but the clothes on their backs. In the city, they would be given a house. Contestants had 30 minutes to make their decision. Most chose to go to the city, even without any money, still representing the offshore people to see if they had the determination to make such a choice. The offshore people brought in the contestants' parents, who were tasked with persuading their children to come home. With the money, they wouldn't have to worry about anything again. Raffin's mother was a typical example. Since she was 20, she had given birth to many children, hoping one would eventually pass the test. Now, with a large sum of money, returning to the slums would change their lives. But Raffin didn't want to go back. The city was his dream, but his mother held a trump card over him. Years ago, Raffin had participated in the test, but didn't pass. To gain eligibility, he had gotten his brother drunk the night before the test, implanted the competition chip in himself, and taken his brother's place. Raffin begged his mother for one more chance. He wasn't in the competition for the money, but the family needed it. His siblings had died from starvation. Because of this, Raffin needed to pass the test and use his abilities to change their fate. But these grand ambitions meant nothing to his mother if he didn't bring money home. She threatened to expose that he had stolen the test slot. At this point, Raffin decided to take a firm stand. If he couldn't get into the city, he would reveal that his mother had orchestrated the theft. Once the authorities found out, all her future children would be barred from taking the test, no matter how many she had. Seeing Raffin's determination, his mother was deeply upset. She left, cursing him as an ungrateful traitor. Despite her harsh words, she didn't expose him and dragged her heavy body back to the dilapidated slum. Among the candidates, some also gave up their chance to enter the offshore city. With the money, they could build a new home, significantly changing their lives. Most parents who came here advised their children to bring the money home. However, Fanato's father was different. He didn't care about the money. He only hoped Fanato could become an offshore resident. Once in the city, its advanced science could easily cure him, allowing him to walk again after 10 years in a wheelchair. But Fanato just wanted to bring the money home. He saw the competition as unfair, witnessing many people getting eliminated despite their efforts, and some even losing their lives. This 104-year-long competition was nothing but a blatant lie. The money would ensure their future security, sparing his father from daily hard labor. But Fanato's father had devoted his life to promoting the competition, believing it was the only chance to change their fate. If his son didn't pass, how could he face others? That was his father's dream. After experiencing the unfair competition, Fanato's old dreams shattered. The competition was deceitful, unworthy of his efforts. But Fanato didn't consider his father's regrets. His father had failed the test and held a lifelong grudge. His son had overcome great difficulties to get this far and shouldn't give up easily. Even though becoming an offshore resident meant they could never see each other again, that was the price of success. Fanato's father opened the door and told the examiner his son had decided to stay, then turned and left. Michelle, unlike the others, had no parents, only a brother. After participating in the competition at 20, her brother disappeared without a trace. Some said he was murdered during the test. Michelle entered the competition to find and avenge her brother's killer. While lost in thought, she accidentally broke the glass money box. The examiner came in and asked for her decision. Seeing the broken box, Michelle hurriedly explained she hadn't hidden any money and offered to let them count it if they didn't believe her. The judge reassured her that these things held no value offshore. People here didn't need money, they only wanted results. Naturally, Michelle chose to stay, as all the contestants had made their own decisions. Next, they selected a group to evaluate the remaining candidates and arrange a personalized test for them. So once they were offshore, they could excel in their respective roles. During the competition, Michelle displayed leadership and high survival skills, but she rarely showed genuine emotions. To assess various aspects, the judges decided to arrange a family-related task. Aileen rated Raffin poorly. He needed to steal others' achievements in the competition, so his trustworthiness had to be tested. As Aileen was the supervisor, no one objected. Michelle received her task, which was to persuade parents to let their 10-year-old daughter participate in the competition when she turned 20. This task seemed simple. After changing clothes, she walked in, only to be stunned. They were the family of her best friend Alita. Alita had been executed by offshore authorities for a crime Michelle had committed. Now, Michelle had to tell them their daughter was dead. The parents were still asking if their daughter had passed the competition. Michelle couldn't find the words, and could only say that an accident had occurred during the competition. Alita had died. Alita's father was in disbelief, questioning how she could have died in a simple competition. What exactly happened? Michelle continued to lie, fabricating some details. Alita's death wasn't anyone's fault, just an accident. Alita's mother, trying to stay calm, asked where the body was, wanting to see Alita one last time. This wasn't possible. Showing them the body would reveal the death wasn't an accident. Michelle continued lying, saying the body was sent to the offshore burial grounds. Since she died during the competition, offshore held a grand funeral for her. Many people joined the competition each year, making accidents unavoidable. She apologized to Alita's parents on behalf of the management. The parents didn't want to hear more and decided to leave. As they were leaving, Michelle was notified she had failed the task. She hurriedly stopped Alita's parents, urging them not to give up. She told them if they let their younger daughter participate in the competition at 20, she would have a chance to go offshore. Alita's father angrily rebuked her, saying they just lost one daughter. How could they risk another? They only wanted to leave quickly. Michelle then played the sympathy card, revealing that her brother had also died in the competition, murdered by someone there. The parents were stunned. Michelle went on to share her painful past, explaining how her brother had meant everything to her. The year of the competition, her brother even gave up his chance to participate to take care of her. She had urged him to seize the opportunity, but she never expected he would never return. 3 years later, Michelle received news that her brother had been executed for cheating. She knew it was a lie. The judges listened intently, wondering how someone could weave such a touching story, mixing truth with fiction. Michelle was determined to pass the task to find out who killed her brother. After tugging at their heartstrings for a while, the parents felt they shouldn't prevent their younger daughter from entering the competition. However, they had to say it themselves. Michelle urged them to confirm their decision. Alita's mother, resolute, said she would let her younger daughter enter the competition again and believed she would succeed. Michelle's lies helped her pass the final test, and the judges acknowledged her abilities. They hadn't expected her to craft such a convincing story. Raffin's personalized task was very simple. He just had to turn on 2 lights by 6 p.m. However, Aline emphasized that both lights had to be turned on simultaneously, with one switch at one end and the other at the opposite end. Raffin realized it wasn't that simple. How could he be in 2 places at once? Aline believed he was smart enough to find someone to help. This task was trivial for others, but extremely challenging for Raffin. He had wronged many people, and no one would help him. As he scanned the area, he saw someone he knew. However, he had previously stolen food from this person and had just failed his previous task. Asking for help now was a joke. Raffin kept searching for someone to assist him. He asked Johanna, but she was fiercely independent and never sought or gave help. Desperate, Raffin saw Fanato, but knew he wouldn't help a scoundrel like him either. Facing elimination, Raffin decided to play his final card. He pushed Fanato into a restroom and claimed that he and Michelle were allies. He revealed they were both members of the Resistance. To maintain secrecy, they weren't supposed to know each other. But Raffin had cleverly discovered Michelle's identity. They shared the same goal, to overthrow the unfair competition. Fanato was stunned to learn they were part of the Resistance. Raffin pleaded for help, explaining that although he had resorted to underhanded tactics to pass the test, it was all for the greater purpose and necessary sacrifices had to be made. He told Fanato that if his identity were discovered, Michelle would also be in danger. For Michelle's safety, Fanato went to the location to activate the switch. Raffin anxiously watched the clock, and at precisely 6 o'clock, he pressed the button. He then ran to the other switch, and halfway there, both lights turned on simultaneously. Fanato had helped him. Despite his usual calm demeanor, Raffin couldn't contain his joy and called out Fanato's name. He had finally made it, while Fanato was still in shock. After the celebration party, they were about to enter a completely new world. Michelle took a knife and removed the capsule containing poison from her body. She had to kill the person who murdered her brother. The celebration party was extremely lively. After a series of tests, they were about to become offshore individuals, part of the top 3% who would enjoy resources unavailable to the other 7 billion people. When Michelle saw the murderer who killed her brother, she was furious. She no longer cared about becoming an offshore member. Avenging her brother was now her top priority. She slowly approached the judge, Ezekiel. His job was to select the top 3% from the countless poor people to become offshore members, utilizing their talents to serve the offshore community. This task was enormous, requiring him to both supervise the exams and guard against resistance spies infiltrating the process. Candidates approached to thank Ezequiel for his help. He placed his wine glass on the table. Michelle felt the moment had come. Holding the capsule in her hand, she watched as Ezequiel finished greeting others and turned around. She hurried over to him, initiated a greeting, and thanked him like the others. After a brief conversation, during which she hugged him, she slipped the poison into his wine glass and then turned to leave. She joined the other candidates, keeping an eye on Ezequiel. He was about to drink when XERA, the instructor, came to greet him, followed by more well-wishers. The two embraced. Michelle anxiously watched the glass, but Ezequiel hadn't had time to drink. The crowd blocked her view. Both men picked up their glasses simultaneously. Ezequiel walked to another spot, gathering everyone around. After the party ended, all present were now offshore members. He asked everyone to raise their glasses in a toast. He downed his wine, but suddenly, Zara collapsed. They had switched glasses by mistake. Michelle had accidentally killed an innocent person. Staff carried Zara's body away, and everyone was shocked that such an event had occurred at the party. After some investigation, it was found that Zara had died from poisoning. How could anyone want to kill him? Surprisingly, the cameras at the party had not been functioning, so the culprit couldn't be identified. After analyzing for a while, they discovered that the poison was similar to the type used by the resistance organization. This kind of poison didn't exist offshore. Among the contestants, there was an insider from the resistance. Why would the opposition take such a big risk to kill an innocent person? Ezequiel was utterly puzzled. The alarm rang, and the chips implanted in the contestants emitted a sound, prohibiting everyone from leaving the area. Ezequiel urgently reported to his superiors, stating he had a solution. The contestants waited a long time in the hall. Soldiers armed with weapons arrived to investigate each contestant one by one to prevent collusion. They called the contestants into private investigation rooms according to a list. Who would have thought a simple party could lead to such a major incident? Manager Viho, however, was very pleased. He instructed Aline to quickly gather evidence to drag Ezequiel down and take his position. Contestants were questioned one by one. Ezequiel focused on those related to Zara. Although contestants could easily develop grudges against the judges during the competition, the questioning revealed nothing. The next person was Fanato, who appeared the most nervous. It took a long time before he answered. Ezequiel sensed something was off. Fanato was not telling the truth, but he didn't press further. Next was Michelle. Drawing from his many years of selection experience, Ezequiel immediately sensed something unusual about her. After asking a few questions, he had his answer, but didn't confront her directly. Instead, he showed Michelle a video of Zara's wife and their once happy family now shattered. Michelle's evasive eyes revealed her discomfort. A compassionate person wouldn't bear to watch this scene. Ezequiel was now sure of his answer but did not arrest her immediately. Later, Ezequiel called for an urgent meeting. Viho reprimanded him for letting such a serious incident occur, implying Ezequiel was no longer fit for his position. But Ezequiel stated he had found the culprit and that the soldiers were on their way to make the arrest. Michelle was extremely nervous, but the soldiers passed the hall and went to Aline, accusing her instead. It turned out Ezequiel used this opportunity to defeat his opponent. Viho couldn't believe it. Aline, whom he had appointed as a supervisor, had poisoned someone of a lower rank. Ezequiel had anticipated Viho's reaction and had another move ready. Although Aline had no motive to kill XERA, what if the real target was Ezequiel himself? He showed a video of Aline pouring wine and explained that Zara had accidentally taken Ezequiel's glass, leading to his death. Moreover, this type of poison was commonly used by the resistance. Viho thought Ezequiel was speaking nonsense, reminding him that he had been a judge for 10 years. Ezequiel continued, revealing that Aline had entered offshore through a competition designed by Viho and had been infiltrating offshore for years, waiting for an opportunity to sabotage the competition. There was no way Aline would easily surrender and accept the blame. However, Ezequiel had another trick up his sleeve. A month earlier, they had captured a member of the resistance organization. This man confirmed that Aline was a key member of their group. 10 years ago, through the competition, her mission was to act modestly and gradually climb the ranks so that all the organization's spies could infiltrate the competition. These spies would become offshore officials and, eventually, some would join the management board. With the ultimate goal of overthrowing offshore, the evidence was clear. No matter how Aline tried to explain herself, Her words held no value. However, Aline also had evidence. She presented her proof, which she had gathered while overseeing the competition. It showed that Ezekiel had an illegitimate child in the slums. Despite the solid evidence, a week earlier, the management received a report in which Aline praised Ezekiel extensively. Now, Aline was out of chances. She would be escorted to the offshore court. Even Viho couldn't save her. Aline had been made to take the fall for someone else. Ezekiel signaled to someone in the management, indicating that the report had been altered. The resistance member, expecting his reward, was promised a quick death in his homeland if he cooperated. But Ezekiel had no intention of fulfilling that promise. The contestants left the scene and returned to their rooms, awaiting the next day to officially enter offshore. They underestimated Ezekiel's cunning. Early in the morning, Fernando knocked on Michelle's door, but she wasn't there. He asked Ezekiel about her whereabouts, and was told that Michelle had been disqualified due to inaccurate background information and had been expelled minutes earlier. Fernando couldn't believe it. If she wasn't there, becoming an offshore member meant nothing to him, so he chose to withdraw. Ezekiel was astonished. Only 3% of new candidates make it this far, and now Fernando was voluntarily giving up. Fernando's decision puzzled everyone. Why withdraw after passing? He didn't offer much explanation. He just wanted to find Michelle. When he reached the exit, he didn't find her. Only a guide who informed him that he had been disqualified. Fernando was utterly confused. Hadn't he voluntarily withdrawn? Realizing the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed, Fernando understood that after witnessing the injustice in the competition, he no longer wanted to stay. He had stayed only because of Michelle. Offshore didn't need someone who wasn't loyal. This had been a test, and he had failed. Fernando was left outside, locked out. Michelle had not been disqualified. Ezekiel couldn't easily let a resistance organization spy go. So it turns out her brother didn't die. He was the first killer in hundreds of years on the offshore. She was imprisoned because she still had value. Ezekiel captured the leader of the organization, dismissing their childish attempts to believe that sabotaging the contest would achieve equality. From the beginning, fairness was never part of the equation. People are simply divided into those with value, and those without, nothing more. The person behind Michelle's actions was valuable to Ezekiel. Michelle's life was temporarily spared, but she was sent to the offshore psychiatric hospital, where Ezekiel could control her more easily. There was still one more condition to becoming an offshore resident, which infuriated Raffin. This condition was sterilization. The offshore residents feared that any children born would be hard to educate, so they came up with sterilization. When they needed more people, they would just select from the slums. That was the real purpose of the contest. Raffin was also taken aback. Even though he dreamed of changing the injustice, he never imagined things would come to this. He couldn't accept it. Everyone else was very calm. They had already become offshore residents and didn't need children. One person left first, then everyone else went for sterilization one by one until only 2 people were left. One girl cried continuously. After being comforted and encouraged by a guide, she mustered the courage to undergo the procedure. Raffin wanted to leave, but then thought of his lifelong dream to change the selection contest and demand fairness for everyone. He bravely faced it, and everyone applauded him. Now the contestants would get on the bus to the offshore city that many dreamed of. This is the entire plot of the movie, 3%. What do you think of this movie? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Please leave your answers in the comments below. Thank you for your interest. Goodbye and see you next time.